Good morning. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm conducting my talk today on the sexual exploitation of undocumented immigrants and the effects of criminalizing immigration. As globalization has increased, migration has become a central point of conversation in the United States. It's an issue that's surrounded by political controversy, clashing statistics, and heated conversations. According to Finkner and Schrock, 2000, human trafficking has become a lucrative market in the United States, the commodities of which are men, women, and children. The transport of undocumented migrants to the U.S. is mostly for illicit industries. However, many of them come here with the promise of legitimate work and a chance to achieve the American dream. However, in order for traffickers to maximize profit, long-term physical and mental exploitation of these victims tends to be the result. As you can see in this slide, due to the increased wealth disparities between richer and poorer countries, wealthier countries happen to be the more lucrative locations for sex traffickers to make money. And unfortunately, the more vulnerable populations to trafficking reside in the poorer countries, creating a transnational pattern of trafficking migration from poorer to richer countries. This figure from the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime 2018 depicts the trafficking flows between countries of origin and the destination locations for exploitation. And I'd like to mention that a notable 71% of trafficking into the United States is for sexual exploitation. Also, in Central America and the Caribbean, the share of children is among the largest origins of child trafficking victims recorded worldwide, estimated at nearly 66%. Compared to other countries, Central America and the Caribbean contribute to a whopping 87% of total persons trafficked for sexual exploitation in the year 2016, most of them being women and young girls. Central Asia is also another large market for trafficking women and young girls, most for sexual exploitation, which makes up about 97% of victims originating from this region. And in this slide, as you can see, throughout the world, women and children are the most preferred commodity, especially for sexual exploitation. Statistics from the United Nations estimated that nearly 1.2 million women and girls enter the global sex market every year through human trafficking. And women and children victims are often forced or coerced into the sex trade. And in 2016, nearly 70% of the victims trafficked to the U.S. for sexual exploitation were women, and another 26% were underage girls. While immigration restrictions are necessary, they have led to an increase in international human trafficking. As more rigid restrictions continue to be imposed, especially in the more wealthy countries, unauthorized migration ensues. With both economically motivated migrations and migrations of individuals fleeing oppression and conflict, people are more desperate to voyage illegally in search of better opportunities. The increase in border restrictions and enforcement has resulted in an amplified sophistication and violence of organizations that promote illicit trafficking and smuggling. For example, in the United States, restrictions have made it almost impossible to get into the country, causing more people paying smugglers to help them gain access to the country, which often results in them being vulnerable to exploitation. The strict enforcement of laws on immigration allow the smugglers and traffickers to have additional power over their victims, who are often afraid to get involved with law enforcement agencies for fear of detention and deportation. The majority of women and children working in these businesses have no understanding of their rights in a foreign country. Traffickers use abuse, threats involving harm to their families in the country of origin, inaccurate threats of the legal process, and even deprive victims of their immigration papers or their identification papers. And as you can see in this slide, the inequities of sexual exploitation, supply and demand, modernization and globalization, fears over deportation, and unknown avenues of assistance, and the difficult nature of intercepting this trade all help to perpetuate this vicious cycle of sex trafficking undocumented immigrants into the U.S. and elsewhere. Oh, let me go back. The Department of Homeland Security points out that the prevalence of human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and forced labor throughout the world is an urgent humanitarian issue and has endorsed a globally accepted framework known as the 4P paradigm, which entails teaching prevention through education, skill building, and public awareness within the local communities, protection plans that provide a safe environment for reporting, prosecution, which aims to use all law enforcement tools at their disposal to increase, but more so improve, its investigations on reported and unreported crimes of human trafficking cases that rarely reach prosecution or conviction. And then partnership is where members of the community and local law enforcement agencies interact with their victims daily and have the most up-to-date information that could assist in trafficking rings and bringing them to justice. Yet, this whole program depends highly on the cooperation of the community and individuals within the system. And it is important for us as social workers and individuals in the criminal justice field to know the signs and to advocate for change because we're an inherent part of the system. And we have the power to not only engage victims to help them break free, but also educate those within vulnerable communities on issues regarding sex trafficking and legal resources that are available to them. Also, while legal resources are not inclusive of everyone, they are an important tool for the majority of victims, yet most don't have this knowledge. There needs to be an expansion in the legal understanding of the situations that encompass human trafficking and how our judicial system of criminalizing immigration feeds into this perpetuating cycle. The law should be more accommodative of the different situations that lead migrants to become victims of human trafficking and exploitation. Additionally, policies that do little to protect the victims but instead increase marginalization should definitely be revised. And while a lot of these changes to be made fall within the responsibilities of a policyholder, we as social workers and individuals in the criminal justice field can contribute to this change through advocacy for policy reform and by connecting victims to available assistance such as medical, housing, offering counseling services, and helping law enforcement identify these victims. And here is the National Human Trafficking Hotline that I felt was really important to include. So if anybody needs that, it's good to have on hand because you never know who you're going to work with. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate it.